everyone, how are you doing today? My name's Kirsty and on today's video we are going to be talking through these ticking time bombs, otherwise known as my self-destruct books for 2023. If you are unaware of the self-destruct books idea, I first saw this on Rebecca Fowles' channel and I will link it below because she's lovely, her content's great, so please go check her out. And basically she selects once a year a group of books that she puts on a self-destruct timer, and the idea being that if at the end of 12 months you haven't read those books, then you unhaul them, get rid of them, because, you know, if you've not gotten to them after you've made them a priority, then you're probably not going to get to them, so you might as well clear them off your shelves. So I've chosen 12 books for 2023 that I have decided, due to one reason or another, need to either be read or be gone. Some of these have been on my shelves for years, some of them are books that I'm very intimidated by and not sure I even want to read, and there are a couple of them that I'm a bit worried are possibly a little bit outdated, more in that maybe I should have read them when I was younger and maybe I won't appreciate them as much since I have strayed more into adult fantasies and adult books lately, and I struggle with YA a lot more these days. I've kept it down to 12 because in the past couple of years I did like the 21 in 21, 22 in 22 challenge and failed both abysmally, and so yeah, I've gone with 12 because I thought one a month, that's much more doable and I'm more likely to actually achieve the goals that I'm setting. And yeah, so without further ado, we are kickstarting with one of the ones that I think maybe is a bit too YA for me, and it's also a genre that I'm not overly big on, and that is The Stars That Rise by Rachel Vincent. I picked this up from my library about 6 years ago. Got it for about 30p, I think, maybe even 20p. And yeah, I've just never picked it up. And this one's a bit of a sci-fi, from what I understand. It's like urban fantasy sci-fi crossover, very YA. And like I said, I'm just a bit concerned that maybe I should have read it when I was younger. But I made that mistake with Poison Study this year where I thought it was going to be too YA and it ended up being incredible 5 stars. So you never know. Next up, we have one that has been on multiple TBRs and I've just never gotten around to, and that is Three Dark Crowns by Kendara Blake. I've heard very mixed things about this, where some people think it's a really great trilogy, some people think it's really bad, and a lot of people have been very disappointed by this book and this series. So I think hearing the negative reviews has made me a little bit more nervous about reading it. This was also a bit of a win buy, I got it during COVID, so I just haven't picked it up. We then have one that came in a book subscription box. I got the Too Good to Know, I can't remember the name of the subscription, but it basically is like a second-hand subscription box and you get between 3 and 5 books every time. And I went for it for a couple of months, and one of the boxes had a bunch of fantasies in, including The Innocent Mage, and it also had book 2, which I can't remember the name of off the top of my head. Oh, Awakened Mage. So we've got The Innocent Mage and The Awakened Mage by Karen Miller, which is a duology, so it's quite nice that they sent me both books so I can just complete the series if I want to. I'm not really sure why I've been reluctant to pick this one up, maybe because it's a bit older and it looks a bit smaller, and it's, even though I am more into adult fantasy lately, I'm still not, like, it still scares me a little bit. So yeah, that's the only reason I've been reluctant with this one. Next up is another one of the ones that I'm worried about being a little bit too YA and a little bit that I should have read when I was younger, and that is Graceling by Kristen. I am very intrigued by the magic system, and anything that has like assassins and things like that in, usually I'm very intrigued by, so I do want to get to this one. But like I said, just worried that maybe I should have read it like 7, 8, maybe even 10 years ago when it first came out. Maybe, I don't know. We then have Thorn by Instar Kanani, and this is I think this was a Forbidden Planet special edition, so it's sprayed edges and it looks all pretty. I picked this one up last year for the Reindeer Readathon. We had a prompt that was to read a red or a green book cover, so I went with one that was green with red. And yeah, I got 60 pages in, put it down, and never picked it back up. I think it's also partly that it's from a region of the world that I've typically not really been invested in, and historically I've not enjoyed books as much that are sort of Middle Eastern and Persian inspired. I've been more into sort of East Asian, like Japanese, Chinese, and South American, and sort of Scandinavian, Nordic. So I think that's also a reason, is it's based off of, it's set in a region that doesn't really hold a lot of interest to me. But I do want to spread out with my reading a bit more and read more from this region, so Thorn's going on the list, as well as another one that's set in that region, which is The Wrath and the Dawn by Renée Ahdieh. I definitely want to get to this one because it's a retelling, and you know me, I love my retellings and I want to read as many retellings as I can. This one is Beauty and the Beast, which isn't my favourite story in general, and it's again set in a region and inspired by the mythology of a region that hasn't really piqued my interest up until now. But I've heard so many great things about this author and this series of books that I'm like, I need to get to it. Next, there was another one that I think might be a little bit young, and I know that a few years ago it was listed as like absolute must read if you want to read LGBT books. And that is Homo Sapien versus the Human Agenda. No, it's not. It's Simon versus the Homo Sapien Agenda. I knew I was getting something wrong there. And yeah, I've heard a lot of great things about this one, but I'm wondering if this is still one that is considered a must read, or is this one that maybe I could just put to one side because there's better and more representative YA LGBT out there. So let me know in the comments what you think. We then have another one that came in a subscription box. I used to have a subscription to chocolate and a book. So as the name suggests, you used to get a book and some chocolate, and usually a hot chocolate sachet of some sort in there. This was one that I'd never even heard of, and it's The Lost City by Amanda Hocking. And I think because I've never heard it and I've never heard anyone talk about it, this author or this series, I think that's why I've just not gotten to it yet. I have realised I tend to read books that are more sort of well known. And so I do want to kind of challenge myself again in 2023 to read more books from authors I've never heard of. And speaking of, we have Harley in the Sky by Kemi Dawn Brown. I picked this up for a reading challenge where the prompt was to read something set in a circus or a carnival, but I ended up reading Caraval instead. And so this one's just been sat on my shelf for like 3 years now. I think, was it even released 3 years ago? 2 years this one's been sat on my shelf. I got it just after it came out. And yeah, it's another one of those ones where it's an author I don't know. I've never heard anybody talking about this book, so I don't know if it's a popular book. And yeah, I'm just a little bit nervous but also excited to get to it. We then have Spin the Dawn by Elizabeth Lim, and I don't know why I've not gotten to this one because I am so excited for this. It has pretty much everything in it that I would look for in a book. But for some reason, I've just been really intimidated out of reading it, and I'm too scared to read it. But I'm determined I will be getting to this damn book. I'm hoping in January, because it just, I don't know, this has January vibes to me. Don't ask me why I know that. It just does. Then we have the most recent book. This one I've only had on my shelf since October, and that is When Women Were Dragons by Kelly Barnhill. And I'm adding this one because I know that without a push, I will not pick this book up. Because it's sort of like historical fantasy, surreal kind of thing, and I think it's quite a speculative fiction, and it's quite a feminist book, and it's all sort of stuff that I wouldn't normally read. But I've heard a lot of great things about this book, and I've heard a lot of people praise it, and it does sound like the sort of book that I do want to start reading more of. So I do want to read this. I just know that without a push, like a challenge like this, I won't get to it. We then have This Poison Heart by Kaylin Bayron. This is the Fairy Loot Special Edition. I bought it the day it was released, and I've picked it up and I've started it. I've read the first chapter and then I just didn't carry it on. But I think I'm reluctant with this one because I read Cinderella is Dead and didn't overly enjoy it. so I wasn't holding out many hopes for this one, but I have heard a lot of people say that this is the far superior book and that this duology is brilliant, and her writing has massively improved and the plots are a lot better than Cinderella is Dead. So I'm hoping that that little snippet from people and what I've heard is going to help me to want to read it a bit better. And then the final book on this list is The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. This is one of the first Illumicrate books I ever got, and I did start it. I think I got about 50 pages in, and I think it was just one of those, I was reading it at the wrong time and I was in the wrong mindset, because it was intriguing, but at the time I kind of was struggling to follow it because it is quite sci-fi and it does use some sci-fi terminology in there, and it was a little bit more scientific than my brain could comprehend at that time. So once I get into the right mindset, I think I will really enjoy this one. It's just a case of actually finding a time and a place where I actually can sit down, put my attention into it properly. But there you have it, those are the 12 books that I have decided to put onto a self-destruct timer, and if by December next year I have not read these books, they will be unhauled. Let me know if you are also doing a self-destruct challenge, and if you are, please leave a link in the comments because it would be awesome to see what books you have put onto your lists. I'm going to head off. I will see you tomorrow for the next in the Bookmas video series, and I hope you're good, I hope you're staying safe, and until next time.